All right. So I don't know if this then constitute as episode 2. So, since
I
we
guess.
stopped and started.
I didn't even change my shirt.
That's right. Look at you. You wear the same clothes every day. Just kidding. So I have a couple things. So I have I got my ESV Bible here.
Oh, that's a nice one.
My jumbo print.
Yep.
But then I also have the Tanakh.
Okay.
Because I have some of my Jewish buddies. We talk and say, oh yeah, but it's been rewritten. It's not the same. And we were going through this, and it is the same with the exception of a few words. A few words. But you'll find that in most translations there are slight variations, not in the message, but just in the language.
Yep.
So should we do the ESV here? What are you using?
Well, I have an NIV,
All right.
New International Version, but I don't care. Let's read yours. Where do you want to start?
Genesis 1:1.
All right.
We're going to start at the beginning, folks.
Okay.
In just so people know, we'll see how far we get. So Ty also has a Bible study that he does on Sundays, and you've said, and I've witnessed, that you can get one verse and talk about that one verse for hours.
Sometimes you only get 3 or 4 words.
Maybe that'll be the case. So
just depends. Yes.
Yeah. So in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's 1:1, folks. The
Right.
earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. There's a lot going on there. Easy to read over.
Yep.
But there is a ton going on. So how long is that?
Well, yeah. And where did the water come from? And what does it mean he was hovering?
That's a good
Raises
question.
a lot of questions. I mean, hovering sounds like a spaceship, doesn't it? But I'm not saying that it means that, but it sure makes you look and go, what is going on here? And something to remember about Genesis 1:1 is nobody was there to witness this.
Right.
Right? So Moses is writing this down, and it's to give us an explanation as to why we're here and who put us here.
Right. And
so this is the very beginning of that. This is not here to tell us how old the earth is. There's no time frame in here.
Well,
like some have said.
And the perfect point of that is, and again, like I said, these verses are so packed. There's so much that you can just gloss over and not realize. But it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Okay, something happened. And then the earth was without form and void and full of darkness. So what happened?
Mm-hmm. That's called the gap theory.
Okay.
Yeah. So between verse 1 and 2, yeah. I mean, if God created the heavens and the earth, he doesn't create chaos. He creates perfection. Right? And so we know that. And then we get to verse 2 and says, now the earth was formless and empty, and darkness was over the surface of the deep. So there's a lot of speculation that there was someone here before us, and there was a great war, or there was a great destruction, and it was all wiped out. And this is a recreation of what had been created. That's a theory that's out there, which is as valid as any other one. There's also a teaching out there that there were angels here, and this is where angels dwelt, was on this earth before humans were created, and that's how Lucifer got here. He was put here to be in charge of this earth, and he was given dominion of this earth and given power and authority. And maybe at this time, and this is another maybe, I'm leaving all this in the maybe category, but this is where he decided to become God. You know, he was already ruling this earth. Why not just rule the whole everything? And there were already a lot of angels under his authority, and so he was able to convince a lot of them to follow him.
So,
and there was a rebellion, and that's why we find this. That's why we find it darkness and formless and empty, all destroyed again.
right.
Maybe I'll leave that as a maybe.
Right. And so I guess it's important to note that there are some things that we're going to talk about that are definitely within the scripture. And then some things say, well, it could be this, it could be that. And
Absolutely.
We're speculating. And this is one of those speculative things, but it does beg these questions. And I do think that people who maybe think that the Bible is not serious or shouldn't be taken serious is because there is a large camp, probably an overwhelming camp, who say the Bible or the earth is only 6,000 years old. And then, people say, well, but science, paints a very different picture. Archaeology goes back. We find artifacts from tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years ago. So then they throw the baby out with the bathwater. Well, the Bible says it's 6,000 years old, and so that can't be true or whatever. And so I guess the reason why to meditate or speculate a little bit on what's happening between these verses 1 and 2 is because it does jive with the reality we see around us a little bit, is where we're finding artifacts from. So how is that possible to find things on the earth before 6,000 years ago if the earth is only 6,000 years old? You may be ready to say this because you've said it to me a few times, but it also becomes one of those arguments that doesn't matter, right?
No, it doesn't matter. But what does matter is that there is a God that created this. It didn't evolve.
Right.
It didn't come out of even worse, maybe worse than evolution. There wasn't some lightning bolt that struck some swamp somewhere and sparked some cell to life, and it had enough ability to be alive that it learned how to reproduce itself before it died. It just gets ridiculous. This very beginning of life, how life develops is however the Creator sets it up. He can set it up to develop. He can set it up to evolve. He can set it up to do whatever he wants it to do. But there still has to be a power, something greater than what's being created to create. Yeah. That's an easy law that I don't think anybody could argue with that. But anyway, the great thing about, I think, acknowledging or learning this Genesis thing and about God is that if there is a creator, then we have purpose, because he didn't create us by mistake. Right. We're not by chance. We have a reason to be here and a reason to be alive. And so I think that's why this is important. And back to your your comment about the 6,000 years. Really, if the Bible is going to be accurate as far as time, it's really all we know is it isn't even 6,000 years from when Adam was created. It's really 6,000 years from when Adam and Eve sinned. Right. It's really where the clock starts keeping time is when they sinned. Because if you think about it, Adam was, well, we're going to get to that. What was he, 900 and some years old? Right? Well, when did they start counting? Well, they didn't start counting until he sinned.
Right. So how long were they around?
Yeah, how long did they live before that? I was listening to one guy, he said it was 1 hour. They only made it an hour. And then they sinned.
Yeah, that doesn't sound right.
You know, some say, I read another one, oh, they made it 2 weeks. I don't know where they get this stuff from. They pull it out of thin air. There's somebody else's commentary from 500 years ago. So now that's the truth,
Right.
you know. We don't know how long Adam and Eve were in the garden before they sinned.
Right.
Doesn't say.
Right. And we don't know how long the time period was from God creating the heavens and the earth, and then the earth being void and full of darkness. So just something for people to think about and not get caught up in this, oh, it's 6,000 years old, because a lot of people say that. But when I read it, I don't see it saying that.
Right.
You know, I don't see it saying billions of years. I just don't see it saying anything on that. And that's maybe the point that we're trying to make is, you know, don't get caught up in the weeds of trying to put a time limit or a time frame on something. Because
Well, yeah. And, you know, I know it's jumping ahead a little bit, but if you go to verse 14
Yep.
in chapter 1,
Yep.
it said, and God said, let there be lights in the expanse of the sky to separate the day from the night.
Yep.
Right? And let them serve as signs to mark the seasons.
Yep.
And the days and years. Okay. So here we got days and years, right? Do you know what day this is? It's day 4. So that means that day 1, 2, and 3, there is no sun, there's no moon, there's nothing spinning. There is no 24-hour period. It hasn't even started yet. So how long were those days?
Right.
1, 2, and 3.
Now, I guarantee we've already, some people like, oh, these guys are nuts. They don't know what to do.
I'm just saying, it doesn't, you know, if you look at verse 3,
Yeah.
it says, well, verse 2, where you said, darkness was over the earth, over the deep. So verse 3, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. But that doesn't mean it was the sun and the moon and all that spinning. That doesn't happen until over here in verse 14. Right. So he made light and said that it was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. See, and then what's interesting is there was evening and there was morning the first day. See,
so that blew my mind. I read, so
it doesn't add up.
That was another thing that blew my mind. I must have read Genesis chapter 1, 2, 3, I don't know, every morning for about 30 days. And somewhere close to the end of the month, I finally caught it and said, wait a second. There was evening and then morning.
Right.
And so when I think of a new day starts with morning and then it gets dark and it's evening. But this doesn't say that. The new day starts at the evening, which then also makes sense why Jews who celebrate, you know, Shabbat, the new day starts in the evening. None of that ever dawned on me until I read this 35,000 times. And then one day I picked up.
Are you making a joke? Dawned on you? Yeah. So Friday. So, well, if it's this is Thursday, right?
Yep.
And the sun's starting to go down. So let's just say the sun is down at 9:30 tonight.
Yep.
Well, that means at 9:30, Friday starts. Right. So Friday will start at 9:30 tonight. And then it'll run all the way through until tomorrow night.
Right.
And then that's when Saturday will start. Right. So all of that stuff is important when you're trying to calculate things like Jesus dying on the cross and what day it was. And I mean, there's lots of things in the future in the Bible that get squared away when you realize that the day starts when the sun goes down and not when it comes up.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Well,
good point.
Yeah.
Good point.
And there it is right in the beginning. So
yeah.
Anyway, so let's keep reading. Where were you?
Well, that was the end of verse 5. So then verse 6 says, and God said, let there be an expanse between the waters to separate water from water. So God made the expanse and separated the water under the expanse from the water above it. And it was so, and God called the expanse sky, and there was evening and there was morning the second day. So what we see, and again, so we don't know what is separating the evening and the morning, because we don't have any sun or moon spinning around. You know, we're not doing that. But yet it says there was light and there was darkness. But my point is I'm not arguing the point that there was light and there was darkness. It just doesn't give us a time frame as to how long that took. You know, you really can't put that in a 24-hour period. I mean, you can, but the Bible doesn't say that, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, so it's an interesting thing to keep in mind then about making assumptions.
Yeah, we just assume. Well, it just says the second day, because there was an evening and there was a morning.
Right.
Okay, I get that, but we have a problem which we're going to come up to with verse 14. So now verse 9, and God said, let the water under the sky be gathered to one place, and let the dry ground appear. Okay, so here now we're getting land, and it was so. And God called the dry ground land, and the gathered waters he called seas, and God saw that it was good. Now, remember, back to what we talked about earlier, and that is, you know, this is just saying God, and God said, right?
Right.
Right? So remember what we read back in John chapter 1? We could go back there, John 1:1.
Yep.
In the beginning was the Word, or the Torah.
Yep.
And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. So see, we're talking about, what I like about this is talking about this Jesus, Yeshua fella, right? That we have in our earthly history claiming to be the Son of God. And now you have this John saying, yeah, we saw him, you know, and we connected him with not only being the Son of God, but being the Word of God, is what John's trying to say here. You know, because did you turn there to John 1?
Yeah, I've got my Old Testament open still.
Yeah.
Let me get it.
Yeah, well, I still got my hand there, but what's really interesting is John 1:14.
Yeah. And yeah, became
You know,
flesh. Yeah.
Yeah, it says, and the Word, or remember we said that's the Torah,
Yep.
became flesh and made his dwelling among us. Right? See, that is just bizarre. You know, that I think maybe more people struggle over that than a lot of things in this Bible. Is that how in the world how do the words become flesh? You know, and yet John and Paul are both testifying that nothing on this whole planet, even the planet, wouldn't be here without him, this Yeshua Jesus fella, right? So when we go back here to Genesis 1, and look at verse 3, we'll go back to that. And God said, see, God spoke, right? So the spoken word of God is what did the creating. God said it, and it, boom, there it was, right? So without God's words, there would be nothing. If God hadn't said it, how about that? Let's say God said nothing. Would there be anything?
Well, and then when we think about said, though, in speaking, it's hard not to think of like earthly, you know, but what is God's voice? And I had heard, and you know, I don't know, something about sound waves, and that having to do with creation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, vibrations.
Vibrations. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you asked a good question there. You said what is God's words?
Right.
Is that what you said?
His voice.
What is his voice? Yeah, thank you. So if you were asking John that, he would say it's Jesus, Yeshua. That's his voice. See, that's what's really interesting. And he said, and not only is he his voice, but he became flesh. God's voice became flesh. See, it's really bizarre. You know, it's because we're trying to explain, you know, it's like today, you know, we like to make movies out. I can't remember what the one was where the guy entered into a video game. I don't remember what that was now, but it's on that order because you have a creator who's outside of time and outside of this whole thing, creating this place, right? So he's created it. He loves it. He loves what's inside of it. He loves what's around it. He loves the whole thing. But then what we read here, the bizarre part is that the creator entered into his creation, became part of it.
Right.
You know, and that just blows our mind. How did he do that? Well, he did it through, that's what you're saying, he did it through his voice. He did it through his words. How he did it, we don't know, but we know we know the avenue that he took. You know, and then he did that so that, like back to what we said, so that this word of God can be the pathway for us back to God. You know, that's why he makes that claim. I came here so that I can be the bridge back to the creator, so you can have a way back. And so it's just an interesting connection, which I like to refer to, because when you read this and God said, you really don't get an I feel for Jesus in here or Yeshua or anything New Testament. You know, you just don't get that feel. It's like, okay, here's this, and God said, you know. And so anyway, the New Testament writers are doing their best to make that link. And I guess that's all I'm doing, is I'm just trying to point out what they're trying to say. Because I think a lot of people might argue with that, but I'm just trying to be a voice for John.
There you go.
Yep. So anyway, so in verse 10, you get the dry ground, you get land. Yep. And God saw that it was good. And then 11, and then God said, let the land produce vegetation. Okay. Seed-bearing plants and trees. So here they come, that bear fruit and with seed in it according to their various kinds. And it was good. And it was so. The land produced vegetation, plant bearing seed according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kinds. Now, and God saw that it was good, and there was evening and there was morning the third day. Now, what's really interesting about that, you know, it's like, how long do you think you'd have to wait before an orange tree would start producing something else?
That's right. What a great point.
See?
That doesn't happen in a day.
No, it's probably going to do oranges forever. Because that's what it was created.
Yeah, no, but I mean, like, it's not like in a day, seed plant, the whole thing grows, and then more and more of it grows. Like, that all takes time.
All takes time. That's right.
So, you know, I don't know. I guess I'm not trying to harp on this, how long is a day thing or whatever. But again, there's so much packed into these, where it's talking about this happening on, which day was it?
This is day 3.
Right. So on day 3, God said, you know, let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed. Now, does that mean that stuff is already sprouted, or he's just planting it? I guess that's my point. Because if he's planted, it's sprouting and it's growing, you know, you're not going to plant an orange tree and have it be fully, you know, from seed to tree in, you know, 30, 60 minutes.
Right.
So what's happening there? Are they just planting them, or are they growing?
Or is he putting a full-blown tree down in the ground?
Or is he doing that?
Did he make the whole tree, or did he make the seed? That's a great question. You know, I don't know that we have the answer to that. You know, when you look at Adam and Eve, which we're going to get to, he did not make babies. You know, Adam was full the full thing,
Right.
whatever he was. If he was 6 foot tall, I don't know what he was.
So maybe
He
he
was,
just plant the tree.
you know, boom, he was that big. So we know when he made people, he made them big. But your question is, when he made these plants, did he make the tree, or did he make the seed? Right? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It says the land produced vegetation. So that sounds like he planted a seed.
well, but if the land produced it, then it sounds like the land was coded to do this. That he didn't need to even do anything at that point. That the
What else
creation
he
was
did?
already made, was baked into the soil. I don't know. You know.
Yeah, well, he says, let the land produce vegetation, right? So he may have done that by putting the vegetation in the land.
Well, in one thing that geneticists, you know, we all have dirt in our DNA. Like we're all made of the same stuff. So
Yep.
this just, you know, solidifies that.
Well, and when we get to the creating of man, you know, he formed man out of dirt.
Yeah.
So you can see why science says that everything here came from here. You know, well, but that doesn't disagree with what the biblical narrative. That's what it's saying. Yeah, God used everything that was here, and in His creation. So I don't know. It again, it gives you a lot to think about. not only Kyle, your idea about, well, maybe this would have taken time for, you know, I mean, if all of this is seeds, well, you've got hundreds of years going by if you're going to grow a whole tree, right? But maybe on this day, all the seeds went in the ground and just began to grow. You know, at that point, maybe we don't have any full-grown trees at this point, or anything. It's just beginning.
Well, and that's something else I think about though. Like God is not a genie, right?
He's
Like
not a genie.
everything He does takes time.
Mm-hmm.
Everything throughout this entire book or collection
Right.
of books talks about, you know, God.
Yeah, he doesn't blink his eyes and nod his head and poof, it's there.
Right.
Right. Yeah. No, you don't see that. You don't see him creating like that at all. One other thing I was going to make about point about this was and trees bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kinds. So that it just simply produces what it is.
Right.
And it's locked into it. You know, so an oak tree, when those acorns fall off and are in the ground and they sprout, they're not going to sprout anything but an oak tree. Right. You know, and they've been doing that since he made them. Now we can modify things, you know, but if you leave it alone, it comes right back to what it was in the beginning. You know, it just comes back to how it was created. You know, so we don't have a lot of creation in the midst of changing. You know, that evolutionists want to say.
Oh, right.
You know, you don't have an orange tree. That's why I was saying earlier. You don't have an orange tree becoming something else.
Right.
It's just an orange tree, and it will always be an orange tree. You know, and
right. It's not going to become,
you know, cows. No, and cows are just cows. You know, and dogs are dogs. Now we have different varieties of dogs, right? And if you take, you know, long-haired dogs and short-haired dogs and take them all to the North Pole, yeah, the long-haired ones are going to survive and the short-haired ones aren't. So you're going to find long-haired ones up there, but that doesn't mean they evolved. You know, they just have long hair. You know, that they survived. But same way in reverse. You know, you move them to the south, the long-haired ones aren't going to last down there, but they're still dogs.
Right.
You know, they're just dogs. But
So
so,
where are we? Which verse now?
well, verse 14 is when we get the lights. And God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark seasons and days and years, and let them be lights in the expanse of the sky to give light on the earth." And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to govern the day, and the lesser light to govern the night, which would be the moon, right? He also made the stars, okay? And God set them in the expanse of the sky to give light on the earth, to govern. See, here it is. Now we're governing the day and the night, okay? And to separate light from darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, the fourth day. So here's what's really interesting is the first 3 days, there's no sun and there's no moon. So what in the world's making the light? You know, we think light comes from the sun, you know, and the stars, but evidently light is something else.
Right.
You ever think of that? I mean,
No.
that's a little weird
That's-
because there was light and there was darkness long, you know, days before, you know, or whatever amount of time that was before he got everything revolving and spinning as we know it today.
You know,
So,
what else just caught my attention right there was where, and God saw that it was good. So it's like, is he just trying this out? And then he's like, oh, yeah, that's good. I'm going to leave that. You know, it doesn't say, you know, again, put this in the speculation thing, but it begs the questions. Well, what did he see that wasn't good? And did he start, you know, because that's the other thing I think is then we'll get into all this as we get through the scripture, but I think a lot of people view God as he doesn't try things out. He doesn't change his mind.
yeah,
He doesn't experiment. He doesn't reason with us. It's God's very stoic. This is just what it is. It's not to say that God isn't perfect, but that God couldn't try or wouldn't try something and be like, like, I mean, you think about a painter. There are painters who are creating, they make masterpieces. You know, we don't see all the things that they're trying out that they don't like. So if he saw that it was good, then he's seen things that have not been good. You know, that's just the way that.
yeah, right. Well, yeah, and it lends to that type of thought. You know, it's like that's part. I think it's fascinating to think that this God of ours is artistic,
Yeah.
and creative and loves to make things.
Yeah.
You know, and I think what's also interesting is that of all of his creation, right? That's what separates humans, us, out from everything else. You know, like name the last time that Fenway, your dog, sat and watched the sunset and thought, man, that's beautiful. See, it doesn't even, that's nowhere near a dog's brain. They're not going to do that. But yet here we are, and we see that creativity, and not only do we see it, but we appreciate it. You know, because he's instilled that part of him in us.
Right.
And so we're the ones that can write songs and make music, you know, and be artistic and build buildings, and, you know, everything we do is godlike. It's like him, you know. We're like our creator. Wow. Which is pretty awesome that he put that in us. But that really does separate us from everything else.
I would dare to say it's a ballsy move, because you know what happens with that. You give us that type of power. You know, there's a lot of risk involved. You know, look what we do with it. You know.
Well, totally. But and that lends to to a question like, what was God, what was his motive for doing this? What was his motive for making this planet? And for building a system that perpetuates itself. You know, we can call it Mother Nature, you know, but we recognize the fact that this whole ecosystem, one thing is built on top of the other, and on top of the next one, and on top of the next one. You know, you have bottom feeders. You know, you have everything you know that live in the bottom of the ocean, or live on that run around with their nose in the ground to clean up the earth. You know, there's cleaners, and then you have things that live above that. You know, that fill in other areas. But you got a visitor?
Yeah, well, I hear the baby screaming in the background. It looks like I need to go do some help. But so just maybe we'll keep it going from here next time. But
yeah.
But my point on that was, though, God giving us the ability to be godlike really opens it up for us to, I mean, you know, essentially destroy his creation and do terrible things. And we'll get into that, I guess. And that's
we have the ability to destroy it or make it better.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big risk. Okay, so awesome. We're not quite through Genesis 1, but we'll keep plugging away next time. And for anyone who may be watching this or not, I don't know, when we post this, leave some comments or something. If there's if you know, if somebody has a point and we're like, hey guys, I think you got it wrong here, let us know. We'll talk about it. You know. Or if,
at least it should raise some questions.
Yeah.
If nothing else. Right. Yep.
All right, man. So I'll talk to you offline and we'll figure out the next time to do one of these.
All right, Kyle.
All right.
Yep.
I'll check you later.
Good.
All right.
Okay.